It's already 8 p.m. I should probably start drinking beer. So I'll have to talk about something, right? Cheers. Welcome back, everybody, to me doing the thing that I always do on Mondays, except for when I don't do it or do it on Tuesdays. I mean, of course, doing the weekly navel-gazing, the time where I, look at all the books I read last week, all the videos I did last week, talk about what I plan to read this week, and the videos I plan to make this week and then don't do. And then it all descends into rambling. So that's what we're going to do today. Yeah, let's start with the books I read last week. So, after finishing A Fine and Private Place by Peter S. Beagle, which is a lovely book, and you go and read it and then watch the video I did on it, and so forth, I did jump into nonfiction again for reasons. The first nonfiction book I read, or finished at that point, was Reformations by Carlos M. N. Eyre, who is a professor of history somewhere. The book is published by Harvard University Press, so it pretends to be prestigious, is my point here. It's a book about, well, the time between 1450 and 1650, and it gives a fairly good representation of what, happened in mostly Europe, mostly Western Europe, but not only at that time. I think it's a good introduction. He gets some things wrong near the end, especially when he talks about deism and stuff like that. He's not on the money for me. And there's a few moments where he mentions stuff that feels unnecessary. He really hates Marxist historians and brings them up in situations where it's not warranted. And he really hates Stephen Greenblatt's book, The Swerve, which is exactly what I then went and read after finishing Reformations. Yes, I read The Swerve by Stephen Greenblatt, a book that won both a Pulitzer Prize and a National Book Award back in 2012, 2013, something like that. And it's another non-fiction sort of history, micro-history thing. It kind of looks at the rediscovery of Lucretius's famous poem De Rerum Natura, or On the Nature of Things, which was rediscovered in 1417 and has had a bit of an impact on a lot of Renaissance and Baroque thinkers. And Greenblatt kind of looks at like the guy who did in fact rediscover the book, and all kinds of other things around that. It's a really entertaining nonfiction book. If you've never heard anything about the 15th century, this might just be your chance to learn about, well, the Council of Constance, and also about Lucretius, and about Epicureanism, and other fun things. So highly entertaining, and it was also free on Audible at the moment. So I don't know if you have an Audible account, go check it out. What you got to lose, right? So that was really fun. And then I started doing the thing that I said I would have to do, and that is learn about Mormonism. So I did read two introductions. One is the very short introduction to Mormonism from Oxford University Press, published by Oxford University Press, written by Richard Lyman Bushman, who is a more neutral historian and scholar of all things Mormon. He has a book on the cultural history of the Golden Plates coming out soon. He wrote a biography of Joseph Smith, and he's, well, a bit of an outsider, but a sort of semi neutral one from what I can tell so far. And then I went and read Mormonism What Everyone Needs to Know by Terrell L. Givens, who is a member of the Latter day Saints church, and was, writing that one is also an introduction that goes through all the things. Sort of to balance things out. And after that, I did, of course, start the big one, the Book of Mormon. I am sort of halfway through. I finished the first books of Nephi, second book of Nephi, book of Jacob, and book of Mosiah, and the words of Mormon and the other smaller prophets or whatever you want to call them in between. I'm about to start the Book of Alma, which puts me roughly at the middle point of the Book of Mormon right now. I'll finish that one, and then, well, that's all the reading I did over the week. That's quite a lot of reading, all of it nonfiction, you may notice. And we'll see whether I manage to slip in some fiction again this week, because for now, the plan is to finish the Book of Mormon, to then read um, American Zion by Benjamin E. Park, coming out tomorrow, a new history of Mormonism. Well, it's brand new. It is written by another historian of good repute, and it has apparently taken into account documents that were only recently, well, opened up and given to the public. So there's that. I'm looking forward to that one. I have another couple of Mormon books lying around. There is, of course, The Pearl of Great Price and the Doctrines and Covenants, which is the further sort of scripture of the Mormon Church, of the Latter day Saints Church, because it has the collected revelations of Prophet Joseph Smith and some additional stuff around that matter. So I'm going to read that one. Then I'm going to read Wrestling with the Angel, which is an longer analysis and exploration of Mormon theology, dogmas, and so forth, written once again by Terrell L. Givens, who, as I said, is a member of the LDS Church and probably one of the better known names of all things Mormon studies, I guess. Um, so I'm looking forward to having that sort of look at actual theology. I have another book on Mormonism and white supremacy lying around that I will read. And then I'll probably, hopefully, be done with most of my Mormon prelude of reading and can focus on something else. What that will be, who knows? It might be the book 2 and book 3 of the trilogy by M. John Harrison that starts with Light, and I can't pronounce, however it's called, the Kefauchi Tract, something like that. That's the trilogy. I might go and read those. Depending on how long it takes to go through all things Mormon, I might also start with Gog Magog by Jeff Noon and Stephen Beard, because that one comes out on I don't know, in 3 weeks, roughly in 3 weeks. So we will see how long this will take. So that's my plan. I will also have to do a reread of Snuff by Terry Pratchett for our ongoing Discworld read along very soon. So that will also happen this week. So maybe some fiction. We will see. That's the reading plans for now. I'm obviously always open for other things that come across my way and I go, wow, I want to read this right now. Use of Weapons, a reread of Use of Weapons by Ian M. Banks is also on the books for coming soon. That will happen as well. So, what about videos, you ask? Well, I did make one, at least. Yes, I did indeed make a video on A Fine and Private Place by Peter S. Beagle, which is a lovely book, and I already said you should go and read it and watch the video. I really enjoyed the book. It's probably been the most entertaining read I've had this year so far, possibly. I'm really had a lot of fun with it, and I tried to make a video about it. I also tried to make a video about In Ascension by Martin McInnes, which I read earlier this year. I recorded it, I even rendered it, and then I realized that I'm not happy with it. That was yesterday, so the promised second video of the week did not happen because quality control. So I'm going to do another video on In Ascension by Martin McInnes, hopefully tomorrow, and then you'll get that one. I did, however, have the pleasure to be part of a collaboration, of a conversation, discussion that will be out on Friday on Some Okie Dudes on Britain's channel. I'll share it when it is out, and it is a conversation on the question of fantasy and whether it is considered literature or not. And it's with the eminent good doctor, Dr. Fantasy, Philip Chase, and Britain and me. We recorded that on Saturday, and I had a lot of fun with that discussion. I think it's a really good one. You can look forward to that coming out on Friday if all goes well. I also did the live stream, and while not that many people showed up, I think, compared to some of the earlier ones, I had a lot of fun. I think we had some good discussions there. And so that also happened on Saturday. So I wasn't completely lazy, is what I'm saying here. So what will happen this week with videos? Well, as I said, In Ascension by Martin McInnes. It deserves a video, I think. maybe someone will actually, enjoy that, and maybe some of you will then go and read the book because I think it's a really, really good book. And I'll try to also make a video on Him by Jeff Ryman. I'll see if I can manage both of these this week. That would be really cool. I have at least one other idea for a video, but it's still sort of somewhat vague, and I need to figure out where to go with it. But that might be a more generic one on questions of artificial intelligence and audiobooks and stuff like that. We will see. So these are the plans. Maybe I'll also manage to do something vlog like on my ongoing idea of not writing a fantasy novel. We'll see how that goes. It's just some, ideas, random ideas here, but the main focus will be to make videos both on In Ascension and on Him by Jeff Ryman. And that brings me to the rambling part because, see, the way I make videos is oftentimes, I feel probably closer to what you might call stand-up comedy or anything of the sort, because obviously I can't make notes properly, at least. I can't read notes while I'm talking. I do very little editing. So what I do is very much like performing, right? It's like performing a stand-up routine or anything of the sorts, right? Which means that quality control is somewhat difficult for me. I can, and I sometimes do indeed, write down some notes that I try to not forget while doing the actual recording. But that is very much, connected to how active my brain is that day, and depending on how much I get into the talking while performing, while recording, I may forget something. If I'm very tired, I'll probably forget something. you know, you probably noticed that these videos do differ very much in energy levels. This is one of these things because I don't have any form of, just scripting this in any way. And that's kind of what happened with the Martin McInnes book yesterday, right? I recorded it, and I think I captured most of the ideas, but as sort of with a first draft, they were somewhat unformed and unstructured, and I did miss one or two important elements, and I wanted to get it right, so I decided to not put it up and, record a second version. The other part, of course, is that with this all being, live and unscripted, I do try to keep it entertaining, and that means that sometimes I do indeed, practice structure, also practice certain jokes or lack of jokes, you know what I mean? Specific framings, specific images I may use, stuff like that. This stuff comes up in my brain while I prepare to record. Sometimes it comes up while I wake up in the morning. I'm really good at coming up with really stupid things while half awake at like 6 in the morning. That's certainly a place where I'm creative. It's one of those really interesting aspects, and I think it kind of connects to a paper that I haven't read that Cormac McCarthy wrote about. He wrote it last year, 2 years ago. 2 years ago, obviously, since he passed away last year. He talked about it in that one long video interview he did shortly before the publication of The Passenger and Stella Maris. The idea that, our brain does indeed do a lot of work while we're sleeping, and sometimes these things come up. And it's something I've noticed. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, like when I was still studying computer science and maths, we obviously had to do a lot of math exercises during lectures and write, solve. It's basically like school homework, only much tougher in the first couple of semesters. And a lot of these problems I was wrestling with and really struggling and, bashing my head against it until like 3 in the morning, and then just like fell asleep for like 5 hours, 4 hours sometimes only, and, or sometimes even less, and, waking up again in the morning. And suddenly in that moment of half rest, half sleep, I had that, the solution for the math problem in that case kind of showed up. And I feel that's something that a lot of us do have, right? This idea that you need to think about something else so your brain can actually do the thing. Terry Pratchett mentions that as well in some of the Vimes novels, I think, when he talks about doing something else, focusing on something else while the brain is actually doing the work. And sometimes that happens with videos that I make as well. And waking up in the morning is one of those. Taking a shower is another one that really helps me focus or think about these things in a way that is actually productive. The question is always how do I get more of that? Obviously, more sleeping and more showering might be not sustainable, but it's certainly one way of doing that. But the other part is like, how do you then keep remembering things? How do you do that? And one way I found is exactly that bashing my head against that I talked about, which is, where writing a first draft of a novel might come in. But it's also for me with these videos, right? I switch on the camera and I yell at it for half of an hour, and then I start rendering it. And like while I'm halfway through rendering the video, I realize that I forgot something essential, and then I get really pissed at myself. But I need to do that first draft, so to speak. I need to do that first recording, in order for my thoughts to actually form properly, to evolve properly to something that is maybe more entertaining, maybe more accessible, more understandable, whatever it is I'm trying for. And it's certainly something I've done before with the longer videos, the ones on anti-Semitism and Arthurian myth. That a lot of these individual parts, I did like two or three versions before ever, settling on one that I would then actually put in the actual video. But those obviously are very serious in subject. Whereas, well, obviously I take every video I make seriously, but some of these, reviews do have more jokes in them and things like that. And and the interesting part, or the worrying part here, is that unlike, say, stand-up comedy or whatever you do in front of an audience, I can't gauge your reaction, right? I can't gauge your reaction while doing something. It's not like you're telling a joke and you see if your friends are already groaning because they know it's going to be really terrible. You're standing in front of an audience and you can gauge the audience's reaction immediately, and maybe adapt on the fly. I don't have that. What I have is, my personal expectations of what I want the video to be, hampered by the fact that I really can't hear my own voice, so I really, really don't want to listen to anything and re-listen to the videos I make. So it's more like what I remember I have said, and then I go through what I remember I have said, and figure out what went wrong, and try to record it again, and then come and hope that what I remember saying in the second one feels better than what I remember saying in the first one. And sometimes I ask trusted friends and people, it's like, hey, I have these two versions of a video. You mind watching that twice and then telling me what you think about it? Sometimes I do that, but I can't obviously do that all the time, because it slows down everything immensely, and also I really don't want to wear out my friends' patience when it comes to helping me with that stuff. So I just wanted to explain all of that, because I thought it might be interesting. And that's how I do these kind of videos, which brings me obviously to the next kind of larger issue about the Mormon stuff, because what am I going to do with that? Because while it's fairly clear what I'll do with the In Ascension video, and I think I know what I'll be doing there, and I'm fairly clear on what I'll do with a video on him by Jeff Ryman, because you have a book. I have established this sort of format where I give you a quick synopsis of the book, and then go into a spoiler discussion. Usually I try to come up with like 2, 3 main aspects that I think are worth discussing, and then let the whole thing descend into just like additional, oh, and this is why, what I also think. That's at least how I try to structure it in my head, because I feel that's the most useful way of discussing these kind of books. I kind of started doing that with the Discworld novels, and I think I just like kept going. It's like, hey, here's this Discworld book. It's amazing. You should read it, like all Discworld books. But here's the 3 things that make this one special to me. And I think it's a useful approach for me to do with other books as well. It's like, here's this book, and this is what you get. Spoiler free. Go read it, because I would not talk about a book if I don't think it is worth reading, or worth talking about. So here's that, and then you go, and then I'll drink a bit of beer, and then we do the spoiler part, where I then try to give you like 2 or 3 main aspects that made me decide to do a video about the book. And then I'll do the, oh, and also this was neat part. Now this is what makes, in theory at least, doing these videos comparatively easy, because I already have a fixed structure. I just need to think about what are the 3 main things that made me really enjoy In Ascension. And I can come up with these fairly quickly, and then I just need to figure out how, which order and what else to mention. And but that's fairly easy. With the whole Mormonism thing, I'm facing a different problem. Because in theory, I'm reading these books to have a bit of a grasp of Mormon history and Mormon theology and Mormon cosmology, so I can then apply all of that to me reading Brandon Sanderson and potentially other LDS authors in the future. Right? I can, because I grew up somewhat Catholic, and I've done a lot of reading in medieval church history for university and stuff. When I read Book of the New Sun, and I know that what's his name, Gene Wolfe, is a Catholic, I already have background knowledge when it, or at least some background knowledge when it comes to Catholicism to apply to that. A similar thing depending on how Protestant an author is. I know the differences between Lutheranism and Calvinism and stuff like that, right? So I can apply these things, but I don't know anything about Mormons except for all the jokes. So part of me reading all of these things is me getting up to speed, so to speak, on Mormonism and its surrounding culture and so forth before doing the Sanderson thing, because he's an outspoken well, member of the church and has that does have an impact, just as Gene Wolfe's Catholicism had an impact on his writing and so forth. So I felt I needed that. The question is, do you too? Because I've certainly heard some of you say, "Hey, I'm glad you're doing all this research, so I don't have to." Which leads me to the question: like, do I need to make, or should I make a video where that's a quick and dirty introduction to Mormonism for fantasy fans? Is that something worthwhile? Because it is definitely sort of pushing the envelope of what this channel is. Because, yeah, I'm not talking about Arthurian literature, which is still sort of part of fiction and so forth. And while you may definitely call the Book of Mormon Bible fanfic if you feel like it, I would like to approach it with a modicum of respect, independent of my personal feelings on the subject, because I think it's otherwise it will make a discourse on the influences later on more difficult. So it would be a very educational video. Educational videos are obviously difficult for someone who can't write scripts or can't read scripts. So it'll be very similar to like the first half or the largest part of the anti-Semitism video, or the first parts of the Arthurian video, with me just giving you an introduction on history, on the main tenets of what I perceive to be a Mormon belief, the way these fit into American culture, things like that. And the question is that something you'd be interested in, even though it does, at least on the surface, not connect to fantasy and science fiction literature immediately? Because I'm not sure about that, and I'm still not sure if, how far I want to make this, turn this into a general education channel in a way, right? Especially since I always struggle with the question of like, am I qualified to educate anyone on anything? Because I'm not exactly, I don't have a degree in Mormon studies, and I doubt I'll ever will. Obviously, that does not prevent a lot of people doing exactly that on the internet, but I do often suffer from problems with self-esteem and the likes here, and I'm like, am I confident enough to go out and tell you what to believe and what to know about Mormonism? And that's sort of something I'll have to figure out while I'm reading these books. I think it may help just to sort of ground or prepare the the whole Brandon Sanderson series of videos, turn it sort of into like a prologue, or prequel, or whatever you want to call it, as a episode 0 of the Sanderstorm. And like, yeah, this is the first part. We'll see where it goes after that. So I'm still struggling with that. If I try to do that, obviously I need to figure out how to not turn it into like a 3-hour video and spend like the next half year talking about Mormonism, because that's not where I want to go with this. I want to do this. I want to get started with Sanderson fairly quickly, is my point. So that's something to look at in the future. Of course, there's other bits and pieces I need to figure out, how to, have enough money to buy food and stuff for the next year, and build back some form of structure that makes me less dependent on, state money, but also, less dependent. Obviously, I'm not dependent on YouTube money because YouTube money is not exactly paying money. Um, so that's something I need to figure out as well. But I thought today I'll talk a bit about like how I make videos and how that is running up against the expectations I have for myself and for the videos I make, and how that will impact what I'll be doing with the upcoming Mormon stuff and Sanderson stuff. So I don't know. In the comments, let me know what you read last week and how your life is going and all of these things. But also tell me whether you want me to actually do an introduction to Mormonism, or if that's something you'd rather find out on your own, or if you think that would, me overstepping my qualifications. I'd be interested in that. And beyond that, yeah, I don't know. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for showing up to the live stream. If you did so, I appreciate all of you. Give it a like. Do the things you're supposed to do, and do the things I'm supposed to ask you. Like, I don't know, subscribe to the Patreon if you feel like it. Anyway, my point is, have a good day. I'll see you very soon when we talk about In Ascension and him and other stuff. See you around. Cheers.